Hey guys, it's Aaron. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make a glossy button in Photoshop. Start with a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 5 pixels. Just drag that out here. I'm going to center it. I'm going to rename the layer that I just made base because it's going to be the base layer of my button. I'm going to apply a gradient to it, and I've chosen a gradient with a pretty dark gradient, but I would encourage you to experiment to see what you like the looks of. And one thing I would say is if you want your button to have sort of a glassy look, have the lighter color towards the bottom and the darker color at the top. And if you want more of a plasticky look, do the opposite. Have the dark color at the bottom and the lighter color towards the top. I'm adding an inner shadow, which with the gradient I chose is not going to be very visible, but depending on the coloration of the button, that inner shadow will add a pretty cool effect. Adding a drop shadow as well to give the button some dimension, sort of just going to look like it's floating there. I usually drop the opacity of my drop shadows down quite a bit. I find that some people overdo it. Lastly, here I'm adding an inner glow just to give it a little bit more depth as well. Once we put the next layer on top, you'll see how this is going to affect things. So there's the styling of my base layer. Next is the glare or reflection layer. I'm going to create that by just making another rounded rectangle, and it's going to be 1 pixel in from the edge of the base rectangle. So I'm changing my corner radius to 4 rather than 5, and I'm zooming in so that I can see that I've got it positioned correctly. And I'm going down about 50% of the way down the base layer. I'm going to rename that layer glare. You should always name your layers so that, well, A, so that it's organized, and B, if you do any automation, it's good to have unique layer names that make sense. So I'm adding a gradient to this. Both stop points on this gradient are white, but the opacity is going to be about an 80% difference in opacity, with 100% at the top and around 20-something at the bottom. I need to take my opacity of my fill all the way down so that all I see is the gradient effect. I'm going to bring that down just a little bit, actually maybe quite a bit here, to get the effect I want. I'm also going to add an inner shadow, and this is going to act as sort of a reflecting edge on the top of this button. So it's going to be a white shadow. Actually, it's not your typical inner shadow, but you can use a lot of the styles can be used for things other than what their name kind of implies, and this is one example. So there's the button so far. Next I'm going to add some lighting effects to give it just a little more character, make it a little more exciting to look at. The first thing I'm going to do is add what I call a fringe to the top. I'm going to do this with the pencil tool. Just make a new layer that I can draw on. This is a pixel layer. So this button is not going to be completely scalable from a vector standpoint. If you scaled it up, you would have to redo the layers that I'm doing right now so they would look good. But I'm just going to take the pencil tool, 1 pixel, solid white, and I'm just going to draw a line across the top, wind up with that sort of reflected edge of the glare. And then I'm going to use a layer mask to have it fade out on the sides so that you just get sort of the effect of a glowing reflection in the middle of the button. Use a reflected gradient for this, just simple black to white, and then you get that effect there. Looks like maybe I should take down the opacity of that inner shadow that I put on the glare. Take that down just a bit to bring that fringe out a little bit more. So I'm just going to dial that down a tad. You can see what it looks like without it, but you want it there a little bit. Just right about there. Now the last thing I'm going to add is what I call a glint, and this is something I like to call the power of the pixel. This is literally going to be just one pixel dot on the corner, but you'll see the effect that it gives. It's very subtle, but it's the kind of thing that, people will look at the button and say, compared to a button without this, there's just something different about it. Something's just slightly better about this one. I can't put my finger on it, but usually it's little details like this. So I put my first dot in there and I give it a blur, and then I put another unblurred dot right on top. And I'm going to bring the opacity down just a tad. And you can see there it's real subtle, but it gives you just a tiny little light reflection off the corner. And it really does add a lot of character to the button. And that's going to be it. That's our completed shiny button. So thanks for watching, and just see you in the next tutorial.